Right, just a quick run through for just having a play in Unity, showing you a few different bits. Nothing mega, it's not a full-on system, it's just to show you some bits. The first thing is loading Unity, and it's got this annoying habit of loading your last project. So if you double click or select Unity from the start menu, I'm just going to double click my desktop and then press Alt, straight away you should get the wizard up. If that doesn't happen, go up to File once Unity is loaded and say New Project, and that'll do the same thing. Right, so we're going to create a new project. I'm just going to leave it as New Unity Project, but you can give it a more sensible name. And we need to select what assets we're going to import. Okay, what code and other objects and things. So for this one, we're going to do character controllers. We'll have skyboxes. We'll have terrain, and we'll have basic water. And then we just click create. Okay. So depending on what you're doing, you'll need to have different assets. Okay, it's going for it. Just muted my speaker so I don't listen to myself. That was doing me head in, that was. It'll take a while junking about doing this. Okay. And then when it's loaded up, we can crack on. Now when you're doing 3D, one thing that can get really complicated is positioning of everything. So you tend to like build things around 0, 0. You know, X, Y, Z. We'll get there when it's finished loading up. It's getting there, I think. Twiddle, twiddle, twiddle. I could have paused the video, really. Well, there you go. Right, so it comes up with the start window. Lots of little things that you can follow there. Obviously, I'm just going to get rid of that, but you can follow those up. Right, so you get your main windows. The main window where you're going to build everything. You got your main window that gets within your hierarchy that gets populated with your objects that are in your scene. So this is a scene. The inspector over this right hand side lets you change things, manipulate settings, and assets is where you store your models, materials and things, and you'll see some of that. Okay, so to start off with, we're going to create a floor. Okay, and we can do that by going up to the hierarchy thing and saying cube, and then making the sizes of it really quite large. Okay, so we're going to make it a scale of 100 in the X direction, so that's horizontal, and the Z direction, which is in and out of the screen. So we end up with a massive floor. Okay, if you use the scroll wheel, you can zoom in and out. You can see that little white blows my camera. Okay, so that's created that. Now, if we play, use the little play button, it'll render the scene. We've got a grey blob and a blue sky, and that's about it. When you're editing, you need to make sure that you unclick the play button. Now, we're going to add a light. Okay, so in the hierarchy window, we're going to say create a point light. Now, this is a light that just casts in all directions. Okay, you use the little handles, so that's created it, that big circle sphere. The yellow one moves it up and down in the Y direction, and you can see the light. And as we move it higher up, it doesn't shine so bright. So you can use these little yellow handles. Oops, cut that up. Just to undo, don't panic. Use the yellow handles to cast the light further and further. Now if you look on the right hand side, you can see that the range value is changing. So you can use the handles, or you could just type in there 25 and do that. Okay, but I'm going to move that light up, and again I can use the handles to move it. See, it's gone below the floor there, or I can change the Y position, so I'm going to put 10. so it's higher up. Okay. Okay, so we got that. Now we're gonna build a little something to shoot at, a little wall. We're gonna make that out of bricks, and bricks are really a cube shape. So we're gonna create another cube. Okay, and now I'm gonna name these. See, you've got the hierarchy here. So I'm gonna press F2, and I'm just gonna say brick. Okay, the other cube was the floor. See, as I select it in the hierarchy here, it's highlighted in that window. So I'm going to call this, I'm going to press F2 and call it floor. Best to name things that you can keep track. Now we've got a brick. Now I want my brick not to be a cube shape, but a brick shape. So I'm going to make it wider in the X direction. Okay, so I'll go back to my brick. You can see it's selected. It hasn't got a colour. So I'm going to create a colour for this. So I do this by going down to the project window at the bottom and click create here, and I'm going to make a material. And I'm going to call this brick material. So if you ever want to rename it, just press F2. Okay. Now when that's selected, you'll see on this right hand side in the inspector there is a colour dipper here. You click the little white box and that brings up the standard colour selector. So I'm going to make a green brick colour. Okay. Close the window when you're done. Right. Now I want to apply this to the brick. Now in the scene I can't actually see the brick anymore, but I can select it up there. And the easiest way to assign things is to drag a material to the object. And you can see it's made a little shortcut icon as I'm hovering over the brick. Okay. Now, looking at my brick, if I just play the scene, we should see it looks like a flat line at the minute. Okay, that's because it's inside the floor. So I'm going to stop play, and I'm just going to grab. There you go. See, look, whoa! It's embedded in the floor. I'm going to sit it, and you'll see that it's actually at position 1 because that's how thick the floor is. So I'm going to set the Y value to 1. Okay. Right. Creating a wall by making loads and loads of bricks is going to be time consuming. So what we can do is copy and paste an object. So if we make sure the brick's selected, then we do Control D. Okay. And you should see that another brick has appeared in the window. Now we want to position the bricks next to each other. And an easy way of doing this is to hold down W and then use the red handle to move the item about. Okay, so sliding it around. Now it's not really helping me much, but if I hold down V, it's not working. Hang on, if we do that, it's positioning it exactly. You can see in the position window it's changing in very small increments. But if you hold down Control, that's the way to snap it. I'm getting all confused. Okay, so I'll put 2 bricks next to each other. What I'm going to do is create a row of 10 bricks. So I'm going to do Control D to copy that one. And then I'm going to hold down Control so I can position it easy enough. I'm going to do another one. Holding down Control so I can position. I'm going to do one more. And I'm going to stick it on this edge. So I've got 5 bricks so far. So I'm just dragging that handle there, the yellow handle. Now I want 10 bricks across. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select all these bricks. So I'm holding down Control in the hierarchy window and I'm just selecting all 5. Then I'm going to do Control D to copy 5 bricks. Okay. Then I'm going to hold down Control and I'm going to use the red handle to drag them along in that line so they're all sat next to each other. Okay, and then I'm going to select all the bricks. So I've got an entire row of bricks now, and what I'm then going to do is going to copy them again, but I'm going to do a layer above now. So I'm going to hold down Control, but I'm going to do this vertical axis. and you see how it goes up, and then I'm going to do Control D again, and then I'm going to do another selection so I can see it all in that window. I'm just going to drag around. Well, I'm not, because it's not going to work very easily. Right, I'm going to select all the bricks I've got again. So I'm holding down Control so I can select multiple bricks, just like you do when you select files in a folder window. Okay, then I'm going to do Control D, and that's the copy key. And then I'm going to hold down Control and I'm going to move this block up. So that's given me 4 rows of bricks. And I'm going to do Control D again. I'm going to zoom out a little bit with the scroll wheel. Hold down Control so that we can position them. And scroll out again. Do Control D again. Hold down Control. And keep going until you've got enough. I'm going to do a few more. There you go, that'll do me. Okay, so I've built a wall. I'm going to play it just to see. And you can see that my camera's pointing at my wall. Now, the one thing I haven't done, we want this wall to collapse when we shoot it. So we need to turn physics on. Now what I could have done is I could have turned the physics on for the first brick, but I didn't. So what I'm going to do in the hierarchy window, I'm going to select everything so I can quickly select all these bricks. And then I'm going to hold down Control to unselect the floor, camera and point light. Okay, so I've selected all of those first. Right, to add physics to it, we have to go up to the component menu right at the top and select physics and rigid body physics, and you'll see that new things appeared in the inspectors. You can play about with the physics later. Okay, there's lots of different things you can do in there. But if you run, once you've set the physics, you'll see that the bricks are slightly moving because they're all like settling against each other. Okay, if you haven't positioned them correctly, they might fall. But there you go. So we've created a wall. Now the next thing we want to do is we want to be able to control the camera, move it left and right, up and down, so that we can view our scene. Okay. If you need to move the scene around, you can right click over it and that lets you rotate. Okay. Or you can, if you've got the hand tool on up here, this hand tool, you can move around the scene. There are other tools there as well. Okay. Now what you might want to do, you see a little camera preview, you might want to move the position of the camera. So if you select main camera, I might want to move it up a little bit, and I'm just doing it with the numbers. So I'm moving it up, I'm going to move it up a little bit more. Okay, and I'm going to move it right a little bit. It depends on whereabouts you placed your bricks. So I'm just going to put 2 for my X. Z is by default set to minus value, which means towards us. So the camera's behind us, so we see. Okay, so as long as you can see your wall in your preview, then you're alright. Right, we're going to create a script that is going to allow us to move the camera. So if we go down to the little project and create, and then we're going to do it in C#, so we're going to click that, and we get this here. So we'll call it camera controller. Okay. And what you'll see in the inspector is a little preview of what code's in there. There's not much code in there to start with, but we want to be able to edit this, so we're going to double click it. And what that's going to load is Mono Develop, which is the open source project that mimics C# and the .NET framework that Microsoft have now decided to bin. Okay, it takes a little while to set all the code up, but you can see it's jumped up now and loaded up. So as soon as this comes up, we'll be able to start putting a little bit of key checking so that we can move the camera around. Okay. I don't know why I'm getting firewall issues. Yes, you can allow access. Right, so we get 2 subroutines. Okay. Now in C# void just means a procedure is a subroutine. No return value. Okay. We get a start one, which is used for setting things up. You can see the comment says that, and then we get an update one. That's the one that we'll put our key checks in, so that we can move the camera around. But we also want this camera to shoot, so we're going to keep track of some variables. Okay, so we're going to create some variables for this camera, and we're going to call, just put these in first, so rigid body, and you'll see that the picker comes up, and you can just press enter. Okay, and that's going to store an object that we're going to create, okay, in a bit. We're going to have a floating point value for the power that we're going to shoot a bullet at. We have to put an F after that to say that it's floating point number. And we're going to record a value for how fast the camera moves. So you'll be able to play about with this and move the camera faster. Well, I'm going to put 5. So we'll move around at 5. Okay. Now we don't need the start one because we're not going to initialize anything, but I'm not going to delete it, I'm just going to leave it there. Okay. Now, what we then need to do is, and we can just, you've got 2 screens, so I'd suggest you put the mono code screen on one. I've only got 1 at the minute, so I'm stuck like this. So I'm going to flip back to Unity. Oh, what I must make sure I do is save it. So I'll click that save icon, but I'm going to flip back to Unity, and I'm going to now assign this to the camera. Okay, and all I should need to do with this script is I want it to be associated with the camera, so I'm just going to drag it from here. Make sure you can see the camera in this hierarchy panel. Okay, so I'm going to drag the script, and again you get the little shortcut icon. As soon as I do that, in the inspector for the camera, I've now got my script, and you can see it's got the variables. So it knows about the variables. It's got move speed, and I think you can change them here, but you're better off changing them in the code. Okay. So that assigns the script. Doesn't do anything yet, but let's put some key code in so that we can move the camera about. Okay, so let's go back to mono, and in the update subroutine we're just going to put a little bit of code. We're going to create a local variable, and we're going to assign it a value straight away. So this is going to be the horizontal controller. So what we're going to do is we're going to say input.get axis, and then we're going to say what axis. Now what this, if we use this, there's lots of different ways of using input, and you can have a look at the documentation for that. This one will get us the default control for horizontal axis. Okay, so that will be the cursor keys, or I think WASD is the second set of cursor keys that you can use. Right, so we're going to get a value for that, and we're going to multiply by delta time, and I'll explain what that is in a second, and our move speed. Right, now when you're writing games, every time you update, and you generally update at 60 frames a second, you get a time value that says how long since the last update. And when we do movement, we need to take that into account. So it's a fraction of a second. So if we want to move 10 pixels in a second, and we're doing that logic 60 times a second, we need to know what fraction of a second we're working with, and that's what time delta is. So as long as you do this, if I'd have just done move speed, and my move speed was 5, it would do the movement 60 times 5 times. So we'd end up moving really quick. So we need to take a fraction for the current second. If you play about with these, I mean, you can break these to death. Okay, and see what the effect is of taking that time delta multiplication out. Right, I'm going to do So that's going to be for our horizontal. So we're going to move the camera horizontally with like that. Again, use the picker. Now I'm going to do the vertical axis, and I think it's case sensitive, so make sure you do put that. I haven't tested that. You could well, test it and find out if it is. And again, we're going to move it by the same amount of speed. So that sets up two local variables, which we can then use to transform the position of the camera. Okay. Right, so we've associated this with the camera object, so we can say transform dot translate. Now translate means move, okay, in 3D mathematics, and we're going to move it in 3 dimensions. So we've said how much we're going to move it by. So translate isn't a move to this position, it's moved by this amount. So the h value that we've got is how far we want to move it horizontally. So we say that. So that's one parameter. The next parameter is how far we want to move it vertically. The final parameter is how far we want to move it in and out of the screen. Now we haven't set any key code up for that, but you could do. Okay, you could set up some keys to do that work. Okay, and that might be one of the things you want to play with, so you can move further away from and to the wall. But we're going to put no, so we can say don't move in and out of the scene. Okay. If we save that, we should, if we go back to Unity, be able to now run our project, and we'll have control of the camera using the keys. You can see, so I'm moving left and right and up and down. I'm a bit close to that wall, so I'm going to change that in a minute. I've made my wall massive, I think, is the problem. Right, so I'm going to select the camera. In my inspector, scroll up to the top, I'm going to set the Z position further back. So I'm going to do -20. Okay, so you can play about with this. This is why this is called a prototyper, because it lets you just quickly put things together. There you go. So now I can move left and right, up and down. Okay. The next thing we've got to do is create a bullet, and then we can shoot it. Right, what we need to do is we're going to create a sphere. So we're going to go up to the hierarchy, and we're going to create a sphere. We'll leave it as the default size. You can make it bigger later if you want to. So the default scale is 1:1. We'll leave it as that. I'm going to call this bullet. So I've renamed it bullet. Okay. Don't worry about where it is on screen, because we don't actually want it to stay on screen. We need to turn it into what we call a prefab. Okay. Right. So can't see the bullet. Now here's a nice trick. I've selected the bullet. If I press F, it should work. It hasn't worked. You can see my bullet there. I'm now going to move that bullet, I think. Oh, it's not working very well. Hang on, that's what I'm doing wrong. Right, let's drag this bullet so I can see it. Okay. Now you should, that's it, if you press F when you've got it selected, it'll zoom in on it. Okay. Now I'm going to set up another material, so I'm going to say in the project one at the bottom, material, and this is going to be bullet material. I'm going to pick a colour for my bullet, and I'm going to make my bullet yellow. Or it's a bit similar to that. Let's make it a blue colour. Or a red colour. Make it a red colour. Okay. Again, play about with that. I'm going to assign that to the bullet, so I'm just going to drag it, and the bullet becomes that colour. Okay. Okay, we've got assets knocking about here, and we need to organise them a little bit better for this project. So I'm just going to create a new folder, and I'm going to put prefabs, because that's what we're going to create, and I'm going to open that folder. Now I can drag things into that folder, so I'm going to drag my bullet into the prefabs folder. I don't want it in the main scene, because I'm going to create them dynamically, so I'm going to delete the bullet from the main scene, but you'll see in my prefabs that I've still got a bullet. Okay, now what we mustn't worry about is if you made a mistake. You can do undo. Alright, so don't worry too much about that. Okay. Because we're going to shoot this at the wall, we'll need to make sure we've got physics turned on for this bullet. So we're going to go up to component again, physics, with the bullet selected, and we're going to say rigid body. Okay. So you should see when you select that, if you've done it properly, you'll have the rigid body physics bit associated with that bullet. Okay. So obviously if you're on the different selections from the point light, obviously that's got no physics. Click back on the bullet, scroll down, and you can see you've got that. Right, we can go back to our script now and set up some key code that allows us to shoot it. So after we've moved the camera, we'll check for some keys. Okay, quite a simple process. We just use an if. So we're going to say if, and in C# you have to put your condition in brackets. So we're just going to say input, which is a library, get button up. So we're going to wait for a button to be released. Okay, and what we can do again is we can use the default fire button for this, but you can change it. If you go and have a look at the key code, you can change it. So we're going to say if fire is pressed, and I think fire is left control. Okay, but we'll see that in a minute. Then do some actions. Now we have to put braces that mark the begin and end of blocks. So we're saying anything inside the braces after this if is what we want to do if that condition, the fire button, has just been released. Okay. Now what we then need to do is create an instance of our object. Okay, so we want a physics object. We'll call this, we'll just give it this name. Well, we'll call it instance. Right, and then we use a subroutine called instantiate. And you'll notice that as I typed that, instantiate came up purple to show you that it's a method or a subroutine. And the parameters for that are what object do we want to store this in. So we want to store it in bullet, and at what position. So we're going to say wherever the camera is, create it at this position. If I can type properly, position. Use the picker, then you won't make so many mistakes like me. And take the same orientation as the camera as well. So we take the same rotation. Now we haven't messed with the rotation of the camera, but you could do if you wanted to with different keys. And then we just put at the end rigid body. So that says create an instance of a physics object at the position and rotation of the camera. Alright, so we do that. Then we want to push this somewhere, so we need to apply force to it. So we're going to create a force value, which has to be a vector 3 because it's 3-dimensional. I'm going to call it force, and we're going to say oops, equals wherever the camera is currently looking, look forward. So we use a special value called vector3.forward, okay, which just gives us looking into the scene. Don't worry too much about that, you can play about with that, but it's basically the equivalent of saying 0 for X, 0 for Y, but 1 for Z. Okay, right, now we've created that force, we can apply it to our instance value. So we're going to say instance dot add, and you'll see the picker comes up, and we want add force, and you can see what other things you can do. You can do torque and various other things. Don't know what add explosion force does. And we're just going to say that direction of force and times by the power value that we set up here, which you can play about with. So that's how how much force. Okay. Right, so we've got some script. Before we do anything, we must make sure we save it. So we've got just 2 bits here. Moving the camera, and then checking for a button being pressed, and doing some action on that button. We could have put this in another subroutine, if we wanted to. Could have done that. But we haven't, for this example. Right, if we go back to Unity, we should be able to play our scene. Right. Make sure the camera's selected, because what we've now got to say, and you can see in the script thing at the bottom, if you scroll down, you'll see that we've got the power, the move speed, but bullet says none. So we need to tell it what rigid body object we want. So if you go back to your assets at the bottom, go into your prefab folder, make sure you select the bullet, make sure the camera's on. Okay, we're going to drag the bullet over to this bullet thing in the script window. So we're dragging it and we're going to drop it, and you'll see that it should say plus and it'll highlight. So I'm just going to drop it. Now it's got that bullet. So it knows what object we're going to instantiate when we run our code. So hopefully when we run, oh hey, I've got very fat bricks. If I use my cursor keys, I can alter where I'm shooting, and you'll see how the physics is working. And you can see that the balls, oops, I'm underneath the floor, but the balls, if you shoot them, you'll see them falling off the end of the floor. You could make your floor bigger, so that didn't happen. And that's it. Make sure if you're going to change any values, oh, got that tower over. If you're going to change any values, make sure you stop your scene straight away. Remember, right click over the scene to move it around. If you move the hand, you can go left and right, up and down. Okay. So when you've saved it, make sure you save your project when you've done. Make sure you've saved your code when you've done. When you load it up again, if I just quickly do that, I'm just going to come out of Unity, yeah, save it. Oh, never give it a... Right, now it's saving the scene, which is the thing I've built. So this, don't change the folder that you're in, because it all puts it in, once you've selected that initial folder, it puts it all in the right place, and you'll lose everything if you don't. So I'm going to say wall knocker. Okay. When I load Unity up again, it'll load up my last project automatically. If the scene isn't visible, because I've noticed this happen, just say open scene and it'll give you your list of scenes. And there's wall knocker. Although it did actually load it up, and then you can play it again. Okay, that's it.